Hello, everybody. Welcome to Generally Speaking. I'm your host, Bill Lawrence. Today is July 12th, 2025. And I'm getting better at this. I'm going to run through this a lot faster than I usually do, starting with European Union Parliament members. We're still seeing clips of them complaining about the blanket support that the Western powers are giving to Israel. So that video is still going around, and one would hope sometime or other this blanket support will stop. I think I heard something about Ireland actually doing something about that, halting arms shipments, halting something. And it was good to see at least somebody's doing that. All right, what else we got going? Quick, let's run right along. Trump launching more salvos as far as tariffs go. He's putting a tariff on copper of 50% and pharmaceuticals, a tariff of 200%. This is crazy. Tariffs are his magic weapon. And he thinks these are going to bring deals for the United States and bring everybody in line and bring manufacturing back here. He said we were going to have 90 deals in 90 days when he was running. And so far, we've got three sort of deals, and that's about it. And part of the reason we don't have deals is because he doesn't really deal. He just says it's my way or the highway. He kind of lays it out. This is the way it's going to be. And a lot of countries are saying, "Well, we'll take the highway. Thank you. We're not having any of that." So that's what's going on with that. And now what happened? Trump, he just put a 35% additional tariff on Canada. This is on top of a 25% tariff he had on steel and aluminum, which he raised to 50%. And now he's going to put another 35% on top of everything. Tariffs, tariffs, tariffs. Man's going crazy with his tariffs. What else? All the doings of the Trump administration, make America great again. This guy is just breaking, cracking everything everywhere. Comments about the Middle East. The countries over there now are no longer looking at America and Israel as the bastions of stability and the place to hang your hat. Now they're seeing these is not such a good, secure place anymore. They're going more with Iran and China. All deals are starting to turn in that direction. What else? So now, discussions about democracy. I was listening to something about those BRICS countries. They call them the countries of the South, even though China isn't really a country of the South. But someone was giving a speech and talking about democracies and how not all democracies or examples of democracies will be the same. There will be differences, and I thought, well, I suppose that could be right. There are many elements to what is a democracy, and so some might be slightly different from the other. But I'm thinking there must be some key elements, though, like freedom of speech, for one thing. That's got to be one of the biggest. That's often cited as the biggest. And I'm thinking if you don't have that, you don't have democracy. There has to be some definition for democracy. You can't just say, you know, this could be, that could be. Then you just don't have any definition. There's no democracy anymore. All right, what more? We got Trump back to his handling of the economy and the tariffs wanting to bring industries back. What kind of impacts is Trump having with industries right now? Well, right now, at this point, Nike has left the United States and they're gone. Say goodbye to Nike. What else? Tyson Foods, they're gone. They're leaving the United States. Um, Heard of these two companies? Toyota, Honda, gone. They are now going to Mexico and Thailand. We're doing a great job keeping business here. So, what else we got? Talk about authoritarianism and fascism. There's a lot of that with what the Democrats are complaining about. The Republican GOP government is authoritarian and fascist. And I was just thinking, what does it mean? There are a lot of definitions. You got the dictionary definition, and especially with fascism being spoken about so much lately, there were references to political scientists who have a more complete definitions. They got several, 7, 8, 9, 10 different things that make up for fascism. Maybe you don't need all of them, but if you have a significant number of them, you have fascism. But what do we use fascism to mean when we say it? Mostly just bad. Mostly the government taking over everything. No more checks and balances. No more. a proper control of things as it should be. It's more centralized. And well, that's generally speaking what we think. I was just thinking about authoritarianism and fascism in the sense of, is it bad? Necessarily. And I was thinking, no, it doesn't have to be. If you've got a person with absolute power, he's a dictator, total dictator, says everything that he wants to say, and that's the way it is. But what if he says everything good? What if his control, his absolute control, is just bringing about benefits to everybody? Then that's not so bad. Of course, the only thing is with authoritarianism and fascism is the people who are trying to take all the power to themselves rarely have all these good intentions. So I guess we're back to, if you're being fascist and authoritarian, it's just bad. All right, what's the next thing we had? ICE snatching people out of the streets. We see them doing this, and of course we're offended that they're taking the nice, immigrants that aren't making any trouble and just snatching them away. But there's this thing about it's illegal. You can't just snatch people up. If you suspect somebody of being wrong somehow or another, you've got to have a warrant. You've got to do the due process thing. You got to say, all right, you have to come to court, and we're going to, check you out. But just taking people and sweeping them off the streets, that's wrong. And what's worse is they'll take them, and then and you have no communication. They can't talk to lawyers. They can't talk to friends. You have no idea where they are. There was one person, they told him he's going to Louisiana. They like taking people to Louisiana because if they're going to have to deal with any judges, the judges in that district are more GOP, more horrible people. And so the Justice Department says, yes, yes, we'll give them the punishment they deserve if they're in Louisiana. But this fellow thought he was going to Louisiana and ended up going to some African country. So this is really out of control. What's this next thing up? German GDP. I was reading about the GDP, gross domestic product, was on the decline. And what's wrong with Germany? What are they doing wrong? But then I thought, what is the GDP in decline such a bad thing? I mean, considering the GDP is a part of the capitalist consumer society, and the consumerism, that's what they're all about: buy, buy, buy. So if there's not so much buying, that would make the GDP go down. Is it bad? I mean, do we need 1,000 of this and that and the other thing? You don't need like 50 TVs in your house. You don't need 13 of those, that, and the other things. Over consumerism is just craziness. So maybe GDP going down isn't necessarily bad. And what's next? International debt. This was a funny thing. We know us. This country is going in debt horribly. We talk about how big the number is. But I was reading this thing about how, yeah, okay, so let's say we owe money. That's what debt is, right? But there are people who borrow money from us, and in fact, China borrows money from us. We borrow money from them. So saying we've got all this debt maybe isn't really that's the case. If you consider that, well, yeah, we owe you money, but you owe us money. So maybe it's a wash in the end. I think somebody ought to do a study about when you wipe out everybody who owes everybody everything. Well, what's the bottom line? What does it end up with then? All right. So what else? The Epstein stories are driving everything crazy. The MAGA people are going crazy. They wanted those files, and now the files, aren't there anymore. We've got the Department of Justice now fighting with the FBI. We got this list that does exist, it doesn't exist. And then we got this video that came out of the jail cell where Epstein was. And suddenly, what do you know? There's a missing minute in there. What happened to that minute? Oh, the conspiracy theorists, they're going crazy. This just shows something was going on. And all right, so the Department of Justice tried to say, no, it doesn't. It's just that these, recording machines only record so long, and then they have to reset, or a new something takes place or something. And so, yeah, there's a glitch that happens all the time at that minute. I don't know if anybody checked to see if, all of that fit together, but it sure made a lot of people crazy about how there's that glitch. And then there's also another expert who was just looking at the tape, several, many of them all saying, "Yeah, these tapes have been tampered with. They've got, evidence of where they've been saved over, 4 or 5 times. And why would they be saved? Everybody knows you have to save whenever you're making edits. You don't, lose your saves. So this whole thing's a mess. The whole thing is a mess. And it's because the president's on the list, and it's not just him. Lots of other famous people. You remember, was it Prince Prince, one of those princes, I forget their names, he was supposedly on the Epstein list, and I guess nothing happened to him. That kind of just blew over. What do we got next? We got Canada and the United and the European Union. They're looking for new friends now. They don't like dealing with the Americans anymore, and for good reason. And so the tariffs, of course, are the big deal. And then so I was listening to this, and there was some talk about tariffs. Presidents of what Trump is doing, you can't just do that with these tariffs. You can't just say, here's a tariff, there's a tariff, how much the tariff is, whatever. Tariffs have to go through Congress. What Trump is doing is illegal, but the Department of Justice isn't going to say anything. They love him. Anything you want, boss, you got it. What about Congress? Congress is the one who's supposed to, give the stamps of approval on the tariffs. They're the ones who are supposed to say yes or no, how much, whatever. And well, they don't care. They're yes, yes, boss, whatever you want, boss. Trump gets whatever he wants. So Trump's just doing more illegal things. Just about everything Trump does is illegal. Right from the start, when he was having his cabinet, when he was putting it together, you're supposed to go through a process where they get vetted. He was bypassing that. He didn't want to fill out any of the paperwork where these people get submitted to the FBI for vetting. And he right, that's his first thing. Starting off, he's doing things illegal, and he's just been doing things illegal ever since. What else do we have here? Those tariffs, there's a lot of confusion on them. Well, there's confusion because first it's 10%, then it's 25%, then it's back down to 10%. Then it's going to happen next week. It's going to happen in 3 weeks, and it's going to happen tomorrow. There's a lot of confusion. Then the tariffs, when they're put on there and then they're changed, does that mean they're on top of the ones that he already put? And so when it comes time to pay these tariffs, I think people are going to be scratching their heads. Well, how much do I pay? I don't really know what's going on. What a system! This is a crazy town that this whole administration is. All right, just totally another thing, because I just flip through items all day long through different things, and I came upon the Appalachian Mountains. What about the Appalachian Mountains? Well, they're rising. They're rising. What do you mean? Well, scientists got those sensitive data where there's satellites where they can tell, how much the ground shifts. It's kind of good to know sometimes if your ground is shifting, if the oceans are shifting. These things are nice to know. And they said there was a remarkable. They even called it a red flag that the Earth raised up about 15 centimeters in a year, and in the you and I looking at 15 centimeters is hello, that's nothing. Says, yo, no, in geological terms, this is something big is going on. There's something happening under the earth here. Not sure what, but there's something happening. So, but I guess we'll have to just wait for something more to happen. What's next? Toe the line, the line, the line. What is the line? The line is a city being built in the Middle East. It's in one of those desert countries. I forget if it's Qatar, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, but somebody got this brilliant idea. Let's build a city in the desert. Okay, so we've got cities in the deserts already, but this is going to be a new, unique one. This is going to be something new, totally modern from scratch. Where there is no city, we're going to put a city. And the thing about the city, it's called the line because it's just a narrow strip that goes for miles and miles and miles, but it's only a mile wide. It's just a big, long line. That's why it's called the line. And it's going to be this ultra modern thing. It's going to look like just a giant wall, a glass wall. And there'll be all kinds of amenities inside, lush trees, waterfalls, tropical birds. It'll be air conditioned. It'll be like a beautiful city of tomorrow inside. Everything will be in walking distance. Your job will be in walking distance. The amenities like you couldn't believe. And most people were looking at this, a lot of people saying, you got to be crazy. This whole project in the desert. It's even if it was in a place that wasn't a desert, the kind of thing you're projecting here is like trillions of dollars. And, it's just, it's got so many, you got to be kidding me about it that it's but they're going along with it. It's already got a foundation. It's got a place that's starting. And I was reading something funny. I just had to say this about it. Apparently, there are two entities, two people involved, not two people, two organizations or something, focusing on different aspects of the development. And the one or the other of them, it was said, is going to take a hit. Eventually, for some reason, I couldn't follow it all. And the whole point of this is just to mention the funny thing that this person said. He says, yes, one or the other of them is going to get hit. And in the end, it's going to be who gets daddy's keys and who's going to get stuck mowing the lawn. And I thought that was funny. This guy is a riot. He always comes up with something funny. What are we back to? Back to Palestine and the UK ramping up attacks against the anyone who's pro-Palestine. Calling the Palestine Action Group a terrorist, and so many people are screaming about how this is horrible stuff. All right, what's next? Totally off these topics. Driving in my car, I'm listening to NPR. I'm not really sure it's NPR, but I think it is because that's the only station my terrible car radio picks up. And they were talking about a police advisor who was in the force for 10 years or something, and now he goes around. He's on the police circuit, talks to stations, departments, and he even has web videos training the police. And so I'm just driving along, listening, and the first thing this guy says, he's talking about police when they go to investigate a scene, and they're asking people what happened. That the police should know. Make sure you realize how everything they say is a lie. And I'm thinking, what? Everything is a lie. You can't believe a thing anybody is saying. And my head's going, what is, where's this guy coming from? What is he about? And then he's talking about how, he's there to give police legal advice, like, how to avoid being sued because police get sued very often because they do some of the most horrendous, unbelievable things. And at any rate, he wants to help them not get sued. And he says, for instance, how do you know if you might be getting sued? And he says, well, whenever the bad guys say something like, I'm going to sue you, that's how you know you're going to get sued. And of course, well, that would be a way of knowing. But my antenna went up again. What do you mean the bad guys? The bad guys say they're going to sue you. So this officer, this is the reason why we have crazy maniac police in the first place, because his whole attitude is everyone you talk to is a bad guy, he's guilty, and they're a liar. This is the kind of attitude that this guy is promulgating all around. Crazy stuff. What else we got? We get near the end here. Republicans, I've said many times that they're horrible. They're monsters. Now, there are a lot of people who say the Democrats and the Republicans, they're cut from the same cloth. It's the uniparty is what governs this country, and there's a lot of truth to it. To a lot of this, but there are definitely differences between the Democrats and the Republicans, and no one should think otherwise. The Democrats came up with the Affordable Care Act. All right, and that was a major impact on all Americans, and it still is. The Republicans did nothing but fight it forever. So there are definitely differences. And if that isn't enough to say there's differences, let's look at the big beautiful bill that just went through, which is taking away Medicare and Medicaid and SNAP and these things that were supposedly never supposed to be touched, which the Republicans said themselves will never touch it. But they touched it. They touched it big time, and they're going after Social Security too. So this is what there's a difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. And here's the story that I wanted to mention. There's a thing that a lot of states have, not all of them, called a referendum, where if some election is coming up, people can get a hot button topic issue that's floating around in their state. They can have it put on the ballot that people can vote on it. And so this is, just totally comes from the grassroots. I love being called a grassroots. So they get that on the ballot. You have to have, how many thousand signatures just to get it on the ballot. And when it's on the ballot, it has to pass a certain, 55% threshold in order to be approved. And so in Missouri, they had something on the ballot they wanted to prove. Was it something crazy? Was it something outrageous? No, no, it was something like raise the minimum wage. Raise the minimum wage. When the first times minimum wage being raised was brought out, the minimum wage was down around $7. Like that's like nothing. It's completely just crazy. But they wanted to immediately raise it to 15. Now, 15 might have been some kind of a reasonable number for what today's date is, but I think, just bumping something so extreme like doubling it is just kind of like a rocks the system. You know, you're not ready for these things. Like the immigration thing, we can handle immigrants. Immigrants come in here at a steady, at a measured flow that we're accustomed to. The system's built to absorb them. But then when you suddenly have this gold rush, this huge tsunami of people coming in, it just disrupts anything, any country that can't handle that, any community. So the minimum wage being raised to 15, I thought it was good in like what it should be, but I thought it was just too much. Maybe raise it 15, but over a period of 5 years, go up $2 a year for each year until it gets up to there. At any rate, what do these people want for their minimum wage to be raised? Only whatever inflation is. Inflation goes up 2%, raise the minimum wage 2%. Oh, not so bad. But was that all? No, no, no. They wanted something else. They wanted some guaranteed sick leave. Sick leave. Imagine that. You get sick. You'd like to be able to stay home and have your hanky to sneeze into until you feel better and not lose a day's pay because of it. That's all they wanted. Doesn't sound too bad, not to you and me, but if you're a Republican governor who has a small business of his own and wouldn't doesn't want to pay a higher minimum wage, doesn't want to pay for your time off when you're sick, that that doesn't go. So he's the governor. He's got veto power. Scratch that off. Sorry, people. That's what you voted. That's what you wanted. You don't get it. Republicans are just horrible, horrible people. Now, what am I left with? Last thing. Jesse Waters. Fox News. I call it false news or Fox Propaganda Network. And I've just seen too many occasions of them, just well, I mean, they were sued for almost $1 billion because of the claims that the voting machines were, rigged. So I mean, these people are just liars all over the place. The stolen election they were throwing all around all the way. So I mean, they just constantly there's nothing value in them whatsoever, and that has always been my opinion. But I never had the idea of how low some of them are, and specifically in this case, I'm talking about Jesse Waters, this guy with the sick smile that never leaves his face. Jesse Waters, what would I have to say about him? Well, I heard him talking with a Canadian representative. It was one of those split screens. You see half the side is Jesse Waters, the other half is the Canadian representative. And he was talking about the American Canadian relationships and relations as they are right now. And Jesse is thinking, he's saying, well, we love you Canadians, but we don't know how much you guys love us anymore. He says, I don't understand. He says, all the world wants to be American. Which I'm wondering, what? Wait a minute, where are you going? Where did this come from? All the world wants. I mean, sure, a lot of immigrants like to come here. They got jobs here, and especially if you're coming from a place like Sudan or a place where there's economic restrictions that were placed by the United States, and your economy sucks and there's no work, and so you come to a place where there's some work. Now that doesn't mean the Americans are so great. We're terrible with education, we're terrible with healthcare, we've got horrible social security protections, but maybe some of those are still better than where people are coming from. So people want to come, but people in France, Germany, in Europe, no, 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 they don't all want to be Americans. So that's where this guy is coming from, right? And so next he goes on. He says, if I were in Canada, I would consider it a privilege to be taken over by the United States. Oh, can you say this? Well, are you thinking any country, anywhere, Canada or whoever, would think it's a privilege to be taken over? This guy is crazy. But he's not done yet. He's not done. He says, yeah, he would consider it a privilege, but he says apparently Canadians find that repellent. Duh. And he goes on, and I find that personally offensive. He finds it personally offensive. This man is just a twisted, diseased individual. There is no redeeming quality about him whatsoever. Anyway, there we go. I was trying to make this short. I was going pretty fast. I don't think it really got so much shorter, but I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe. Please like, and forward it. Forward it to a friend. That's another thing that keeps my stats going. And you have a nice day, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Thank you, and bye.